Welcome to the 50th celebration to the AJSM, where we are counting down the top cited articles. My name is Berthe Bø, and on behalf of AJSM Electronic Media Editorial Board, I'm pleased to present the article from 1991, which is titled Tensile Properties of the Human Femur Anterior Cruciate Ligament Tibia Complex, the Effects of Specimen Age and Orientation. And to discuss this article, I am joined by the first author, Dr. Xiaohui Wu. Hello, Dr. Wu. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy to share some of the experiences of this particular article, which turned out to be one of the most cited articles from my publication as well. So.
We're very grateful. So could you please start giving us some background information? Why did you perform this study?
Okay. Well, I had a pretty good sized laboratory, and our work is always trying to do basic science, particularly biomechanics. And we want to do projects that are sort of clinically relevant, and hopefully the results obtained is translational. And I think in this particular study, we have done that. We did study usually by asking questions with the right research questions. That is the why. Why do you want to do such a study? Then we want to say, well, what do you want to study? What kind of data you want to get? And that is the what. And finally is the how. How do you do that? And that's the steps that we take in this planning this study. And
why?
Also, the main thing is education. So we want to develop collaborative work. So I have a PhD student, Hollis, and I have a laboratory engineer, Adams, and a resident, orthopedic resident, Lion, and a fellow from Japan, Takai. So we form ourselves a team that way to do this project, to address specific questions about what are the strengths and stiffness of the human ACL. So that's how we did it.
That sounds great, and it's so good to have a team like you described there. So why do you think this specific article became so impactful that it's the most cited this year?
Yeah, I think that we wanted to create good data. So, and it's very difficult to get young cadaveric knees. So we actually get not only young cadaveric knees, but we also get pairs of cadaveric knees. So we got 9 pairs of knees arbitrarily divided for age below 35, mostly from trauma, death from trauma. And then we're the middle age group around 40, and then the older ACL. So our goal is to say, okay, what are the age-related changes of ACL? And then also, how do you test the ACL to get the proper data? And with that in mind, we develop a very, very sophisticated testing apparatus that we can measure not only the AP laxity of the knee, but also the tensile property of the femur ACL tibia complex, FATC. And we got really, really pretty good data out of this and significant findings as a result of this study.
Yeah, that was impressive. Is there anything that you wish you knew back then that you know now? Anything you would have done differently?
Well, I think for this, of course, you know, the science and engineering and clinical practice have really, really, you know, improved in the last 30, 40 years. But for this particular study is interesting because it's very hard to get those cadaveric specimens now. And that's why I think the reason this study, the data and the findings stood the test of time. So this paper is still cited many times a year because it's very hard to do this kind of study today. It is an effort of a team, probably 2 to 3 years time to obtain this data, develop the apparatus and test the apparatus, make sure the data is really accurate. So I think that's why it's hard to repeat now. But there are many other things we can do now based on the data obtained. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And to close this up, do you have any special advices, any suggestions that new authors from your experience as the most highly cited author, any advice for new authors?
Yeah, well, I think it is more important not just have one paper that's most cited. I think that's good, but the most important thing is your research career. It takes time to build. So if one had to learn the process doing something correctly, your likelihood of getting more and more impactful studies will follow your career. So I advise the young people always to ask the why and the what and the how. These three are very important words to remember in that sequence. And then learn how to work with people, share your expertise, and the work will be impactful. And I think it's a long game. It's years of accumulation. So if you just do one project, one paper, it's not going to be too meaningful in life.
No.
So look at the long term. And
thank you for some. Yeah, thank you for some very valuable advices. So, and thank you so much for your contribution to the celebration of AJSM. So happy 50th AJSM.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, bye-bye.